Hello and welcome to Top Story. The political temperature is rising between China and the West over Tibet. The Olympic Games are the focal point of tensions, with France refusing to rule out a boycott of the opening ceremony in Beijing in August. The Czech and Estonian leaders have gone further, vowing to stay away. Other countries such as Britain say they will attend, but they've still upped the pressure on China over its crackdown in Tibet. Many nations won't want to alienate the world's fourth largest economy and a rising global power. But they've called for dialogue between Beijing and Tibet's spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama. That in itself looks likely to increase frictions between China and Western countries as Beijing fires off fresh rounds of invective against the man it accuses of masterminding the violence. Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now by Heather Stoddart, a Tibet specialist at the National Institute of Oriental Languages and Civilizations here in Paris. Thank you very much for being on Top Story this morning. What did you make of the statement by French President Sarkozy yesterday when he refused to rule out the boycott? Is he upping the pressure?
I think that there are still 4 months before the Olympics, and that it's important to see how the situation evolves in Tibet and within in the discourse of what the Chinese leaders are saying, and that it would be an extremely good idea to have a consensus among the 27 European countries on this question. I think this would be an extremely useful move on the part of the Europeans.
Well, consensus is the key thing, isn't it? There's a European summit today. There are some divisions. Some countries have already said they'll stay away. Others presumably not wanting to ruin economic ties with China. Will those divisions, do you think, perhaps play into China's hands as the Olympics approach?
I really would like to see how the situation evolves, basically inside Tibet and inside China. The pressure of the whole world, I think, on China to bring about talks with the Dalai Lama or with the Tibetan people and to find a solution to this extremely grave and explosive situation. I think that this is the most important thing.
Well, let's talk about the international pressure to get talks back on track between the Dalai Lama and the Chinese. The Chinese seem to be stepping up a global campaign to discredit the Dalai Lama. The ambassador in Canada called him a serial liar, for instance. If the Chinese want to take him out of the equation, surely the international community will not accept that.
Surely they will not accept it. He is a Nobel Peace Prize laureate. He has been constantly throughout his career as a Tibetan leader in the world, since he's been traveling around the world continuously from the 1980s onwards. He has kept up a constant, extremely well-regulated presentation of his own point of view, and that is that Tibet, he accepts Tibet within China with real autonomy and does not want independence. I think this is one of the reasons for the breakout of demonstrations all over the Tibetan plateau today. And maybe we could talk further about that.
Yes, we'll talk us through the demonstrations. What's the dynamic there?
I believe that it is not the Dalai Lama who fomented the discord, who organized or orchestrated the demonstrations. It has been shown on the media recently, in the last few days, that a Chinese woman who was in the police who had contacts with the police in Lhasa, she actually identified one of the supposed Tibetan wreckers in Lhasa as in fact being a Chinese person from the police station in Lhasa. So there is quite a lot of controversy and there is a lot of misinformation on the media concerning this, the situation in Tibet. And what is most interesting this time, compared to the 1987 riots or the demonstrations, in fact peaceful demonstrations originally, what is interesting today is that there was a massive, it was like a forest fire. The demonstrations spread right across the Tibetan plateau. I must say that Tibet is not a small, isolated kingdom on top of the Himalayas. Tibet is not the TAR, the Tibet Autonomous Region. Tibet is the whole plateau, the high plateau of Tibet. And especially we have seen since March the 6th, the spread of demonstrations of people, in enormous numbers of people, of monks and ordinary people taking to the streets. From March the 6th to the present day, there are counted over 70 demonstrations, including yesterday's outbreak in the Jokang in front of the international journalists. There have been, so it's a massive movement of all the Tibetan people across the Tibetan regions of China.
So you're saying that it's this movement has its own dynamic irrespective of what the Dalai Lama does or says. Is that a difference between, say, the 1960s or 70s as someone who studied the history?
It is extremely different. I think, in fact, as I was trying to suggest, the Dalai Lama, as a man of peace, has kept up his constant desire for talks with China, for a peaceful regulation of the situation. And this, over the last 20 years, there has been absolutely no advance on the question of talks. And I think that the Tibetan people, both inside and outside of Tibet, are showing today their miscontent with this situation, with the non-solution.
Thank you very much. We'll have to leave it there. Heather Stoddart from the National Institute for Oriental Languages and Civilizations, and author of this book, The Beggar of Ando, a study of Tibet's own view of its history in the first half of the 20th century. Do watch us again on Top Story on Monday.
The program dedicated to international news was brought to you by Le Monde.